Here's a game that released pretty recently on PC. I mean, it's been like a year now, and yeah, you can see it runs pretty well. We're gonna move on to another game. You can see if you can spot a little similarity between these two games. Okay, now we're in Cyberpunk, and this doesn't really look like Last of Us, but what they have in common is that little number in the upper left corner of the screen. That is the CPU usage percentage, because most people think of games that they run very intensely on your GPU. Your graphics card is doing all the heavy lifting. And in a lot of cases, it is. But many modern games really take a huge toll on your CPU. So this is the fastest CPU in the world, the Ryzen 7800X 3D. And there's other things that modern games have that just make CPUs even more demanding. Say like you want to turn on some kind of ray tracing or something like that. Let's go to Ray Tracing Ultra. And at Ray Tracing Ultra, you know, even though our FPS is actually lower, we were getting over 100 without ray tracing on before, the CPU usage is pretty similar. So that means that ray tracing is using quite a bit of CPU. It's actually using more CPUs. And also we're getting monitors that are like this. It's a 1440p 480 hertz monitor. Like, monitors are getting insane refresh rates. And yeah, this is probably a monitor that I don't think a lot of people are going to be buying. It's I think like $1,000, but just to give you an idea of how far monitor technology is going, usually they higher the frame rate. So if you want to achieve 480 FPS that this monitor can actually show, the higher that FPS, usually it's not your graphics card that's limiting you. I mean, sometimes it is, but you're usually going to be doing this in a competitive game where you can actually achieve that FPS. And it ends up being that you're going to have to use your CPU to achieve those frame rates. As we go into the future, CPUs are becoming more and more important in the types of games that we're playing, with the graphical features, with the frame rate we want to achieve, and everything. These guys are so important. Now, AMD is probably the brand that a lot of people are choosing right now. So I did a poll. This is 3 months ago. Like, this is before any of this happened. Most people are choosing, if they were to buy a new system, to buy an AMD system. 77%. Only 15% of people were saying Intel. And if we even compare this, like, cross-reference this data with Hardware Unboxed, he said, do you guys want to see a video on an Intel motherboard or an AMD motherboard? Which basically just means, do people care about Intel CPUs or AMD CPUs more? And you can see it as a 90% AMD CPU vote. AMD is kind of taking a hold of the actual market right now. That's why it's really big when they just recently announced their new generation of CPUs. And I was super excited for this. We reacted to this live and broke it down. And not everybody's negative, but there is quite a few people in here that aren't really that happy with it. 16% IPC, that's a rather conservative brag. 16% IPC equals 10% in reality. We knew that. Basically what people are saying is that the performance of these CPUs just don't look that good. And this goes through as well, like if we check some comments on the video, like from Daniel Owen here, people are just saying, I'd be happy if the chips depress the 7000 series, so the current generation of AMD CPUs. And basically, people just don't want to buy the new ones. They just don't seem that exciting. And during the presentation, like, it probably didn't help that AMD, they did announce the gaming CPUs like first here, but them talking so much about AI throughout the thing is just AI, you know, that's all we got to talk about. And they released these chips that are for, like, they literally renamed their CPUs on mobile, at least at the moment, to literally have AI in their names, man. It is like a weird reality that we're in. It's crazy. And it's that, and then combined with a few things about these CPUs, and people really aren't that happy. So like, if we look at this, 5.7 gigahertz on the top end CPU, which does sound like quite a lot. It's quite fast. But if you compare this to the older generation, 7950X, so the last generation CPUs from AMD, got up to 5.7 gigahertz. If you just check them out against the other ones, so the 9900X, the 9700X, all these CPUs, if you compare it to their last generation, we're about the same amount of gigahertz. The clock speed was about the same. It's that, and if you do look at the cores and stuff like that, so the 9950X is a 16-core processor. There's a 9900X, which is a 12-core processor, and it just goes down like how it normally has been. These numbers might sound pretty familiar to you because AMD has been doing these numbers for core count since freaking 2017 or 2016 when Zen originally launched. So when Ryzen originally came out, like we just see here, 7000 series, same thing, same kind of product stack. 5000 series, same kind of product stack. 3000 series. Now 2000 series, I don't think there's a 16 core. You know, we see that the clock speed is the same, the core count is the same. Is there anything interesting about this generation of CPUs? So the actual performance that AMD is saying here, if you don't know what this number means, IPC, this means instructions per clock. So this is basically how efficient your CPU using the clock cycle. So every clock you can do a certain amount of tasks, and IPC is just how efficiently is it using those gigahertz on the CPU. And what they're claiming is on average, they're getting about 16% IPC uplift from Zen 4, which is 7000 series, to Zen 5, which is 9000 series. That doesn't sound like a whole lot. And this is what people were talking about when they said like the IPC improvements don't seem that good. Also, Daniel Owen did a little breakdown, this was a wild ride, by the way. Check this video out if you haven't seen it already. But basically, there was a leaked screenshot of one of the new processors, the 9900X, how it performed in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, the game. And the settings weren't really shown to the public, so it's hard to compare it. But basically what Daniel was able to do is give you a rough idea of what the settings were running at, and he compared it to his 7800X3D, which is that processor, the fastest processor in the world that I was talking about. And what he found is that the 7800X3D could be up to about 20% faster than the 9900X, the new generation. So it doesn't bode that well that this new generation is going to be faster than the ones before it. And then there's other things that are just stacking up. Is like AMD released more Zen 3 CPUs. So these are AM4 CPUs. Like if you have a motherboard from 2017, you can still use these CPUs. Ask me how I know, because I'm still on AM4 on my main system, which is their older motherboards. And this is a 5800X3D, and I was using this on my main system. And they've gone as low as $200. And this 5700X3D is a very fast CPU, a CPU that can catch up to the 7000 series of CPUs from AMD as well. So this CPU is very fast. AMD's also announcing that they're releasing even more CPUs for this. AMD's new motherboards, the X870 boards. Ooh, you could get higher tier Wi-Fi. Like you get Wi-Fi 7. Oh boy, I can't wait for Wi-Fi 7. Or here's a faster USB port. Cool. But generally speaking, motherboards aren't going to be changing a whole lot either. I don't know what they would really do with it. Just all this stacking up, and these CPUs, they don't seem that good. And this whole like, oh, it's not exciting type of thing, the AMD isn't offering that much type of thing, it starts to also make you wonder.
That is where performance leadership has gotten AMD, and it smells like complacency. I hope it's not the case, but I'm starting to feel like we need Intel to step up their game to keep AMD motivated to deliver better products for gamers, rather than the other way around.
So Linus made the claim, is AMD becoming complacent? Because we know, like Intel, there's a reason why AMD caught up. It's because Intel stopped innovating. Their CPUs were stuck in purgatory, basically, and they could not escape for the life of them. Is AMD getting in that same situation? It's like, hey, here's a minor upgrade on generation, not that much to offer, but at least it's a little bit better. And are they getting complacent because they're at the top? It could happen, because I mean, people are buying AMD in droves right now, but I don't think that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And I got a few reasons for that. This whole, performance discussion on this, that it's like, oh, it's only 16% faster on average versus the older generation. I don't think this is as bad as a lot of people want to make it out to be, because there's many other Ryzen generations that people were super happy with, offered similar IPC instructions per clock improvements generation on generation. Like here from videocards.com, they see, I don't exactly know what the 52% means here on the first one, but going from Zen to Zen 2 is a 15% gain. From Zen 2 to Zen 3 was a 19% gain. That was a pretty big one. From Zen 3 to Zen 4 was a 13% gain. From Zen 4 to Zen 5 is a 16% gain. It honestly seems pretty normal. Is this an earth-shattering improvement in instructions per clock? Not really, but it is definitely pretty good. It's achieving these same clock speeds and better performance with instructions per clock of 16%, while also bringing the power draw down. So if we say, for example, here, the 9950X, that one is actually the same as 7950X at 170 watts, but the 9700X is a 65 watt chip, compared to the 7900X from previous generation, which was a 170 watt chip. And I know that these TDP numbers aren't exactly, you know, like Bible to what the power actually is in reality, but it gives you an idea of how much power these chips can suck back. And we look at the 7600X, that was a 105 watt chip, whereas the 9600X is going to be a 65 watt chip. Pretty crazy, actually, for one generation. I'd say the only downside about this is that normally AMD offers a non-X CPU that isn't as high power, like the 7600 versus the 7600X, 65 watts versus 105 watts. And usually they go for a little cheaper, and they come with like a cooler in the box for you because they are a lower watt chip. Usually these are a good deal, probably one of the best deals in Ryzen. They're 65 watts. I'm not sure if we really need a non-X part, but this power draw, you know, despite maybe taking away a non-X chip, is really important. Because guys, we can't increase power forever. I know, I wish we could just have a 600 watt CPU sitting on our motherboard, frying itself alive and keeping us warm during the winter. But I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry to break it to you, that's just not how it works. Those would be insanely difficult to cool. Current CPUs right now are already insanely difficult to cool. And if we just look at Intel's chips, for example, they're at like 280 watts on the 14700K and the 13900K. If we look at the 7950X, it really wasn't that bad or that far behind Intel's chips. And people weren't ragging on AMD for their power draw nearly as much, but these chips weren't that far behind. And if you look at something like here's a 7700X, that was about 150 watt chip here. They can't infinitely keep increasing the power draw of their chips. So this is like a building block generation, at least to me. It's like, hey, we need to take a generation and we need to bring down the power draw again so that in the future we can build it up. Like it's gonna be like a cyclical thing. It's like it's gonna go, you know, up power draw and come back down. It always goes like this. Like power draw always takes this kind of thing. It's like there's a generation that's focused on efficiency and all that stuff, and then there's another one that will blow the roof off of performance. That happens all the freaking time, guys. This is coupled with some of the announcements that AMD was showing here. One of the major things with a Zen 5 is they really took it to an efficiency standpoint. What they did is they optimized the instructions on the CPU to make them deliver instructions more efficiently. Instead of just throwing more gigahertz at it, throwing more power at it, they really took this generation to make things function more efficiently. In order to do things in the future, they need to be more efficient at a baseline level. It takes some time to do that kind of stuff. And what we'll probably see is that even though this generation also still looks quite good, we're probably going to see that the coming generations are going to be very good as well. And that is partnered, in fact, that AMD also announced that these CPUs on the AM5 platform are going to be supported until 2027.
Which we now plan on supporting through 2027 and beyond. So you're going to see AM5 processors from us for many, many years to come.
That is a massive bit of news right there. 2027. So if you don't exactly remember when Zen 4 announced back in 2022, there's actually a lot of a controversy because AM4, the motherboards before that, or the socket before that from AMD, had basically been supported for so long. I mean, they're still making those CPUs to this day. This new socket was only being promised until 2025. So it was only going to be 3 years of CPUs, which really only means probably one and a half more generations on the CPUs, which isn't that much. Now AMD has extended this to 2027. And this is probably because like the reason they announced 2025 at first was mainly to cover their asses, basically, because AMD wasn't sure what the timeline for like DDR6 was and that kind of stuff. But now they can confidently say that it's 2027 is going to be guaranteed.
We can see probably the next generation of DDR. We don't see that hitting anytime too soon. So that
is there a reason why 2 years specifically? You could have just said, we'll do another year.
I mean, it's above my pay grade, right?
Okay.
Somebody did risk assessment and said, yeah, I'm comfortable with that, which okay.
So yeah, this foundational generation for these 9000 series processors, it's going to build them to make more CPUs on this socket. And I'm not out here like an AMD defender or anything like that. That's what I think is happening right now. And if you want a little bit more evidence of why I don't think AMD is really being complacent, that is with their pricing. AMD pricing is aggressive. Like I already brought up the point here that the 5700X3D, a very competitive, I mean, this tech stacks up toe to toe with a lot of Intel's newest stuff on their chips. This guy's only $200. And it goes toe to toe with them. It's on the last generation and a lot of games and that kind of stuff. It is crazy. If we just look at, the fateful Ryzen 7800X3D, the beast, the mother of all chips, it doesn't actually cost that much. I mean, guys, we're talking like this has gone, I think I've seen this as low as $320 before. Intel's 14700K is slower than the 7800X3D and it costs more. And it draws a lot more power. We've seen that these have changed a little bit, these numbers, because of all the Intel controversy that have gone on with power. But at the time that it was released, the 14700K was sucking back like 280 watts on these systems. Nowadays it should be around 125 watts or so, but that makes it even slower, which is kind of wild. Company that is being complacent isn't really a company that is being competitive on prices. To me, those don't link up too much. It seems like AMD is really trying to push people to trust them, even if it means they don't make as much money. At some point in time, I could probably see them wanting to make more money than they are. There's also rumors that their margins on their products really, at least on the chip side, aren't actually that big, which a lot of times if you're in a leadership position, you would think increase prices so you can, make some money. But that isn't really what we're seeing here from AMD. I'm over here, I'm meat riding AMD on their 9000 series CPUs. Like, hey, these are great and everything. But like a lot of people in the comments here, say like, hey, there's so many tabs. Like a lot of people in the comments, like, should you even upgrade? Do you want to wait for these to upgrade? That's what gets me into a little bit of a deeper discussion, because it depends what you want to do. But if your main priority on your system is gaming, and you might do some other stuff on the side, I don't really think you should, upgrade CPU or wait until 9000 series. It doesn't seem like there's a major reason to, because, this funny little processor exists, the 7800X3D. We've talked about how it's a pretty affordable chip. Maybe as the new processors come out, the price will come down a little bit, but I don't expect it to change that much. And that's really because of the performance of these chips. Like if we see with Daniel's coverage here, I mean, obviously this is very iffy how much it actually performs, but he concluded with some really rough calculations that a 7800X3D is probably faster than a 9900X. This is an older chip, and that's because of, if you know any technical stuff, it's because of the X3D. It's because of the extra cache. It has 104 megabytes of cache, whereas a 9700X only has 40 megabytes of cache. So there's a huge difference with that, and that makes a huge difference in gaming performance. This processor being here, it's super power efficient. It's pretty affordable. It's great for gaming. I think it's going to go very similar to how the 7000 series went beforehand, because we've actually seen this history before. I mean, I have this CPU in my hand. The 5800X3D was a 5000 series processor, with that 3D V cache. These benchmarks in a hardware on box here is that the 7000 series is here, like say a 7600 is here at 221 FPS. The 5800X3D is at 221 FPS. If we look at compared to other 7000 series processors, I mean a 7600X, it looks like there's a large difference here at 230 FPS compared to a 5800X3D. But guys, that's like less than a % difference. I mean, these are neck and neck when it turns performance. Even if we go up to the top end chips, you know, the 7900X is at 234, a single digit % difference between the X3D chip and the newer 7000 series chips. And there might be certain games where in here, like there's a larger gap or a smaller gap. You know what I mean? That gives you an idea. Like the 5800X3D was very competitive with the newer generation of chips. I have a strong feeling that the X3D chip from 7000 series that is very affordable, very power efficient, and very fast is probably going to stack up pretty well against the new chips that are going to be coming along here. If you want to get a new CPU, if you are after the gaming performance, and we talked about how so many games can be super CPU demanding, I would just get the 7800X3D. I mean, this isn't that processor, but I'm gonna hold it in my hand here. This is the 5800X3D. I would just get that processor if you're looking to upgrade anyways. The only thing that would be better than that is going to be the new X3D parts, which I think are rumored at this point in time to come out in Q4. And they're like the 9800X3D. We don't even know what they're going to be called, but we have heard some, you know, back and forth rumors.
Is this just how it's going to be? Is that you're going to come out with a non-X3D first and then the X3D later and make people wait?
Well, what I can say, because I can't talk about unannounced products, what I can say is AMD is committed to X3D, improving it. There's really great technology that's being worked on. Yes, we're going to make you wait a little longer before we make any more announcements because we had a lot to talk about today, but stay tuned.
They probably will be coming later this year. I don't know if I'd wait that long. I don't think they're going to be insanely different. A lot of people, a 7800X3D, even in these games, they can be so demanding with a fast graphics card. I mean, I guess we'll see how fast the new 50 series cards are from NVIDIA. I think the 7800X3D is going to be fast enough for a lot of people, and you get to use it now. I just wanted to talk about the new 9000 series chips that come out. It's like they're getting a little bit of a distasteful response, a little bit of you know, so I just wanted to shed some light on it because I don't think it's really as bad as people want to make it out to be. I mean, the 7800X3D is such a good option that it kind of makes it hard for the new ones to get. But if you want a more versatile CPU that's really good at production work and good at gaming, then the 9000 series could be right up your alley. Basically, this new generation, it's good, and it's a building block generation for the future. AM5 until 2027 plus, actually. So I'm excited for it. So that's it about it for me. I just want to cover this, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.